Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Pilot Lawyer Podcast. Thank you for your attention while this important legal information is reviewed. What you hear should not replace consultation with an attorney and should not be considered advice for your situation. On behalf of the Pilot Lawyer and your entire crew, it's our pleasure to have you aboard.
Welcome, aviators, to the Pilot Lawyer Podcast with us, the Ison Brothers, at the Ison Law Firm. We're here to help pilots and those that want to become pilots navigate the FAA medical certification process. And of course, if you don't laugh, you cry. And for the next 30 minutes, we hope to bring you the lighter side of what can otherwise be a frustrating process. So whether you're laughing at us or with us, join us, brothers, as we discuss the fascinating world of FAA medical certification. Today, we actually have a bit of inspiration as we have a special guest, Jessica Cox, joining us on the podcast. Jessica is best known for becoming the first armless pilot in aviation history. Her achievement has earned her a Guinness World Record medal, invitations from 6 continents, and having been featured on TV programs like Ellen, Inside Edition, Fox and Friends, and Oprah Winfrey. So we're excited to have Jessica join us today to be an inspiration to our listeners, especially as they go through the frustration of trying to achieve medical certification. So hopefully it'll help give them a boost in their thought process as they go through the process. All right, let's get Jessica on the line.
Hello.
Hi, is this Jessica?
Yes.
Hey, Jessica. This is Anthony Ison, Christopher Ison, and Alex Ison on the Pilot Lawyer Podcast. How are you today?
Good.
That's great.
How are you guys?
Hey, we're hanging in there.
Doing pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you joining the podcast and being here with us today. We think you're going to be a great fit for our discussion on just sort of the inspirational aspect of flying and kind of the never give up on your dreams and doing everything you can to try and pursue what's feasible in the aviation industry. And so we certainly are grateful you're here with us today. And thought we'd start off by having you just explain your background and give us a little bit more about what you do and where you come from.
Okay. Well, I have been flying for about 15 years now as a sport pilot, the first to be certified as a sport pilot, flying an airplane with just my feet on the controls in an unmodified aircraft called the 1946 415C Coup airplane, a plane designed in the 30s and built in the 40s. It's a fascinating little post-World War II plane, and it's really been a wonderful vehicle to show people that if I can fly with my feet, a lot other people can fly with other circumstances that they may have in their own life. And it's been a wonderful inspiration to use that platform in aviation to encourage others.
That's amazing. And as far as flying is concerned, what got you started in flying? I mean, and kind of walk us through that journey that you saw an airplane and thought, hey, I can do that too. Or can you walk us through that?
Sure, yeah. I was born without both my arms. So for me, since the beginning, this is my normal. I mean, I'm sitting here in my kitchen right now. I'm holding my cell phone up with my foot so that the mic is right up close to my mouth. I'm resting my ankle on the dining room table, and I'm sitting in the chair. And this is the norm for me, is using my legs and feet the way that people would translate to mean using their hands and arms. And so for me, when the opportunity to fly came about, which actually I was very reluctant to start because I was terrified of losing contact with the ground. And again, that goes back to my whole disability of not having arms, and growing up and as a toddler learning to walk, I would oftentimes fall and I didn't have a way to catch myself. And like many toddlers, you reach your hands out to grab a hold of furniture or something to hold you up. And for me, I didn't have that option. So I took a lot of falls to the face. And for me, that kind of had this fear of losing contact with the ground, and I made sure I was always grounded for my whole life going forward. And I developed really strong muscles in my legs and my core to keep me upright and fall and safe from falling, so I wouldn't encounter those experiences. So I think that kind of created this little fear in me of losing contact with the ground. And for me, that's what flying meant. And it terrified me, that thought. So I never really dreamed about flying in a plane, but the opportunity came about, and it was something that I never even second guessed how I was going to do it. I was going to go about it in the same way I do everything in life. That was going to be feet forward with my toes and feet as my hands and fingers on the same exact controls that people use their hands and fingers on. So that was my translation from the beginning.
So, Jessica, this is Chris, and maybe if you could kind of give us an idea as to why the Air Coupe. I think there's some unique characteristics about that aircraft over some others that might have drawn you towards that one. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Chris, I'm glad you asked that question, just because that's the huge part of this puzzle. When people are asking me, how do you fly? Well, that's exactly right. It has to do with the particular plane. And the Air Coupe airplane, as I mentioned, designed in the 30s by Fred Weick, he actually designed it unique from other airplanes. The ailerons and the rudders are interconnected. So then it allows someone to fly this plane in the sky like you would drive a car. You have a right hand and a left hand on the yoke, and with those, basically the two hands, you don't need your feet to control anything else because there are no rudder pedals. The rudders are interconnected with the ailerons. And so for me, it was the reverse, where since I don't have the arms and hands, I put my feet up on the controls like one would put their hands on the yoke and the other controls on the control panel. And that for me allows me to fly that plane without any modifications, and just by its unique design, where I'm steering when I'm on the taxiway getting ready to take off. And then while I'm in the sky as well, I'm always using my right foot steering, as well as using it like in the usual yoke in other airplanes.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
When you started your flight instruction, not to be, insensitive, but were people sort of raising their eyebrows thinking, well, how can you do that? Did you have trouble finding flight instructors that were willing to train with you?
I thought that it was going to be a challenge. Surprisingly, some instructors are very encouraging, I would say. Maybe I was just fortunate, but I thought I'd be turned away a lot more than what really happened. Was people were encouraging. And as you guys probably know, that the aviation community is a very encouraging community. If you want to get your wings, they're there for you and cheering you on. And that was exactly how people responded. I think there was a lot of uncertainty how flight training would be approached because it had never been done before. But as far as willingness, I had some amazing people that I crossed paths with who were willing to instruct me. In fact, all in all, I had about 4 flight instructors who contributed to my training over the course of time.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's good. That's good to know that people were willing to try and help move you through the process and get you where you were, where you're at now. And I'll ask you this question because I think this is a question that's always at the top of the FAA's thought process, of course, is, has there ever been a time where you felt like, your disability did jeopardize safety in any way? Or is that, I'm sure the answer is no, but has that ever been something that, you felt like there were any drawbacks there?
I think about that. That's a good question that I have actually never received from anyone asking me about, jeopardizing safety. And I think of it like this. I feel like, the FAA and all that is in place to ensure that a pilot is safe really takes you through the whole, all the scenarios. Can you handle emergency landing? Can you do all this? And if I pass that in my certification, says that when I went through my check ride, and if they are giving me giving me the approval that I can do that, then I don't think it is a question of safety. There are things that I have to do. I know that what my limits are because it is physically draining to fly a plane with your feet because I'm constantly using my abs and my legs. And so just like any kind of workout, there's only so far as the endurance goes. there's only so long that I can do that in a very strong manner. So I know what my limits are flying the air coupe, and that's usually about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours tops, because of the physical demand it puts on my body. And using my abs, my legs, especially when it comes to landing, I have to have that strength when I come in for that final landing, when I'm wrapping up the flight. So keeping that awareness is what I think is important, so that I don't ever get to the point of jeopardizing safety for myself, for anyone else who's in the plane with me, or, just in general. So it's important to keep the awareness and the accountability as the pilot in command. And that is the part where I just have to make sure that I am staying very 100%, I'll just say, or 110% when it comes to flying. And there are some days where I will say I do not feel like I am safe, like any pilot. I don't feel like it's safe for me to be maneuvering a plane in the sky. And I can be honest with myself and honest with others on that. And so for me, I really have to read into my body's ability to fly that plane in a safe manner.
Sure, and that's an excellent exercise of the regulation, which is 14 CFR 61.53. Well, with us being lawyers, I guess we cite the regulations, and hopefully I cited the right one. But essentially, if you know or have reason to know of a medical deficiency, even in the sport pilot realm, you should self-ground. So it's always on the responsibility of the airman to do this, this checklist of, I'm safe, that type of thing, to make sure that every flight you're capable of, exercising to the best of your abilities. And I'm sure with essentially the exercise endurance limits that come with your type of flying, that you have to think ahead as far as, what if I get extended due to some sort of emergency or something along those lines? Will you have the strength to be able to exercise the flight to its completion? And so I understand that there probably are additional planning measures that go into your flights then that maybe somebody else wouldn't have to experience, and so on. And that goes for individuals with any type of circumstance. So that's a good point to make, for sure. And so as far as your experience with the FAA to date, I imagine what with the being a sport pilot probably has just been with a designated pilot examiner. Was there any pushback there from the FAA that you've experienced so far?
Well, I was pursuing the light sport certificate, and it essentially is, you use your driver's license as a medical.
Right.
So I had everything already there, and it was a matter of doing the check ride. So that gave me that opportunity just to use my license, and there wasn't pushback through the process. And I will say that obviously I'm in the next chapter now, and I'm right in the midst of it. So it could, at this point, I don't know exactly what I'll experience.
Right. Yeah. And so not to pry into your personal matters, but as far as trying to obtain first, second, or third class medical certification, is that something that's on the horizon for you?
That is right now. So I am working towards that medical as we speak, because I have plans in aviation beyond the ERCOOP, and that is to build an RV10 modified for foot flight with a team of amazing volunteers, of course. I'm not doing the actual building, and engineers who are modifying this airplane that I'm meeting up with tonight. They're coming up with these modifications that have never been done before, so that we could put the controls on the floor and allow for a lot more comfortable flying in a faster airplane. And I'm excited about it. Of course, it's a thrill to know that we're going to be upgrading to this amazing RV10. But again, I'm right in the middle of all that is required. So I went in to the doctor and got the medical, and of course that gets submitted to the FAA in Oklahoma City. And then there's a back and forth with letters and approvals, and then I have to be approved for the statement of demonstrated ability. But right now the airplane that I will be doing that in is under maintenance, so we cannot do that. So I have to wait until the appropriate time when someone is qualified and available to do that statement of demonstrated ability with me, or I will be doing that for them. And then after that, then I will be able to have the official green light.
Has your FAA medical certificate been denied? Are you concerned you may not be able to get a medical certificate from the FAA? Are you at risk for FAA action for failing to report your medical history appropriately? Call the pilot lawyer at 1-855-FAA-1215 to discuss your options for getting the FAA to issue your medical certificate and get you flying. We are happy to evaluate your case and discuss with you a plan for presenting your case to the AME or the FAA. Aviation law is all we do, nothing else.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and take this opportunity to kind of educate the listener if they're not familiar with what the Statement of Demonstrated Ability is, or the SOTA. The way we like to see it here, and I'm sure somebody at the FAA would love to correct us, but the way we like to see the SOTA is when there's more of a static concern rather than, I don't know if concern's the right word, but a static issue rather than a dynamic issue. And what we mean by that is a situation where there's not going to be a change in the individual circumstances per se. So for example, like with diabetes, that's a condition that, if it's not monitored and treated effectively, that condition could potentially become more worsened or could get better. It's going to fluctuate. And that's a type of condition that may be more appropriate for a special issuance. Special issuance being a situation where the FAA says, we're going to monitor this, make sure it doesn't get out of control. You're getting effective treatment, and it's not going to become aeromedically significant. Whereas with the Statement of Demonstrated Ability, that's more of a static situation, like in your situation where you don't have arms, where nothing's going to change per se, and you're going to just continue flying with your feet. And the question really is, can you do it or not? Can you demonstrate your ability? And so in order to achieve that SOTA, which is essentially where the FAA says, okay, yeah, we've vetted this pilot and have ascertained that he or she is able to do what is needed to be done to fly in light of this static concern. We'll allow this person to continue to get a medical certificate, in certain circumstances. So in order to do that, they will put you through what they call a medical flight test. And that's where you typically fly with an aviation safety inspector at one of the FAA's flight standards district offices. And they will kind of put you through the paces as they would almost like a check ride. It's somewhat similar. There are certain circumstances there. But once you pass that, they will issue the SOTA. So are you doing anything in particular to prep for the medical flight test? Are you planning to do that in the modified RV, or what are you planning to do that in?
There was a lot of question about when, and there was really no reason to wait, because this is all a process that takes time, and there's letters and all this whole thing. So we thought, the air coupe is here.
Right.
It's been sitting in the hangar. Why not go ahead and just pursue that, so that once this plane is built, we don't have much, we have a lot to do with it already. It's
Sure.
a big project to build a plane and to go through testing and all that. So we're just going to take care of this now and do it in the air coupe, the flight medical test. And I'm right in the midst of it right now. I've been given the letter from the FAA saying that I'm qualified to do that. It's just a matter of scheduling and making sure this airplane is ready to be flown.
That's great. Yeah, well, that's in our experience, 90% of the problem with the medical flight test is finding a FSDO that has the personnel available to do the testing, that are willing to do the testing, even in regular circumstances where maybe it's just a 172. Sometimes we still find problems with the FSDO not maybe experiencing that many medical flight tests, and it just becomes a bit of a hassle there. So we hope that goes well for you for sure, and that you get with someone who is reasonable in the process, which shouldn't be too hard to find. But yeah, we wish you the very best with that, as I'm sure our whole audience will be cheering you on, and we hope to hear back from you once you've successfully completed that, because I think it sounds like you'll do just fine based off of your experience flying, and hopefully the FAA will have continued open mind to it. So as far as the RV that you're making, so tell us more about that. Though, is the yoke essentially is going to be built into foot pedals? Is that right?
Well, that's the part we're working on right now. Is because the RV10 is going to require a lot more physical control. Can we essentially minimize that by doing something similar to the way the Air Coupe was designed, where everything, something that can interconnect or a way in which that I can use pedals or a single pedal for one foot that can control fore, aft, and as well as the rudder pedal control. And then also at the same time, keep my right foot free because it needs to be free, which is my more dominant foot, for anything else, radios, dialing in different things, which I have no issues with rotating knobs at all between my big toe and second toe. I have the dexterity. Again, I've been using my feet my entire life, and my toes have the same dexterity as fingers would. So figuring out how I can keep one foot free to do some of those other controls that I need to do, and doing all this in a safe fashion, of course, taking into consideration all the challenges along with the controlling a faster airplane, higher speed, more power.
Right.
And then, of course, the landing, which is the most difficult part of all. And that's all being taken into consideration. And we're excited about some ideas that have come forward. I think right now we're still working on a throttle idea. And that's, of course, these wonderful creativity of all these mechanics that have come together. Of course, we welcome that to anyone who has ideas out there. So we created a website called theimpossibleairplane.com so that people can follow us along this journey, as well as submit some of their feedback if they have suggestions.
Absolutely. Well, our suggestions would probably be a waste of your time, but definitely any of our listeners that have any input or know somebody that has some input, for sure, we encourage them to go to the website and try to help you out with any thoughts there. So it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that after the aircraft is completed, your intention is to fly around the world. Is that right?
Yes, it's the plan. It's been the plan for a while, is to make sure that the world sees that disability does not mean inability. And obviously, stigma still exists in other places around the world. So that message needs to be loud and clear, not just here in the United States when it comes to employment for people with disabilities, but also when it comes to that message in general to other countries where children with disabilities are not allowed to go to school, or adults with disabilities don't get to have the opportunity to work and have regular lives like a family and things of that sort, which is unfortunate, but it's the stigma that still exists. So it's definitely going to be a big billboard that disability doesn't mean inability, and we need to take it beyond the United States, North America, onto the other countries where that message is even all the more important.
That's fascinating. Well, we also wish you good luck with that. You've got so many big plans here that we're so excited to follow along with. I know our listeners will. I say listeners, but I hope our mom who listens. Yeah, everybody is cheering you on for sure, and we hope to see you flying past our house on your way to Europe or wherever you go first. But that's excellent. And as long those lines of encouragement, our listener base largely are individuals trying to get FAA medical certification. As we say in our intro every time, it's a frustrating process. And it's frustrating because the process is slow at the FAA due to their backlog and their staffing issues and so on, as well as the fact that it can be an expensive process. There may be legitimate physical and mental health, impairments that are limiting as well in an individual's process to obtaining FAA medical certification. And so one of the reasons we wanted to have you on here is because in our podcast, we try to be an encouragement. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there. And the podcast itself here, we could scare the bejesus out of everybody if we wanted to, but we don't. And that's the whole point of the podcast. Is
we hope we don't.
We hope we don't. Well, yeah, maybe we don't. Yeah. We'll check with our mom and see what she thinks. But our goal is to be encouraging the individuals going through that process and to let them know that, they can persevere. And ultimately, if the medical certification is feasible or if the process is feasible. Now, unfortunately, there are cases that won't work. But if it's feasible and if there is a way, that we always want to try to encourage them and be hopeful for them. And so that's why one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is because we know you're so inspirational to the aviation industry and in the process. Is there anything that you have that you might like to say to those individuals who are in the process, if you will?
Yes, I would love to encourage them. First off, thanks for what you guys are doing. Awareness helps significantly because there's a lot of questions, and if you're answering those questions, I think that's encouraging in itself, is bringing up this conversation and making sure that people are aware that it is possible, and you just have to go through the proper steps to get there. And I want to continue to encourage people. I professionally am a motivational speaker, so I encourage people from the stage all over the world. I've spoken now in 29 countries, but just that messaging that people can do wonderful things. They just need to persevere through it, go through the steps, not give up, and don't be afraid to fail. That messaging is important, and I want to say that loud and clear so that others are encouraged to continue their pursuits of their dreams and not let anything hold them back from that.
Well, that's beautiful. Oh, that's encouraging me to get through the rest of this day, too. Well, I'll tell you what, Jessica, we can't thank you enough for being here with us. And we're, like I said, we're all rooting for you on the medical flight test and the impossible plane and the trip around the world and whatever comes after that, which I can only imagine. And so is there anything that you wanted to leave the listener with, any websites or anything like that you want to point them to?
Sure. I'd love to leave my website, which is www.jessicacox.com. Feel free to reach out to me about motivational speaking. And again, if you want to follow that journey of building the impossible airplane, we have the other website, which is theimpossibleairplane.com.
Beautiful. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us today. We learned a lot, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you, guys, and keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much.
Good luck.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was very informative, and
Yeah.
I would say there was a section there that she was mentioning where she felt the physical limitations over an hour and a half, 2 hours of flying. And I'll tell you, when I was training, I'm at a loss for words, but
obesity is not the same thing.
Well, I know, but I would remember once we landed, taxied back, got the plane done, paid, whatever, and I was going back home, I would just feel exhausted. I mean, it was kind of a mental drain.
Kind of like having a conversation with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that goes without saying.
Yeah,
but
it's always tough.
I think, to fly an airplane for an hour and a half to 2 hours, honestly, especially little airplanes, I think maybe in a bigger airplane where there's more maybe creature comforts, but an air coupe, it's a
creature comforts.
Comforts.
You said comfort.
Creature
comforts.
comforts. Anyhow,
boy.
I think flying an air coupe for an hour and a half, 2 hours, that's going to be draining on anybody.
Now, I can't imagine.
I think you can fly with a canopy. I was going to ask her that. I forgot to ask her.
Well, hey, we're in episode 2.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine even getting my feet up high enough to be able to do anything, let alone walk. I've got very little flexibility.
Incredible.
One word, yoga.
Yeah. Well, it's going to take the whole yoga bear to get these legs moving.
With that being said, I believe there's a picnic basket on the horizon for this
lunchtime. Well, you've logged an eventful half hour listening to the Pilot Lawyer podcast. And as we wish Jessica the very best as she endeavors on her flights around the world and her medical flight tests, we are the Ison Brothers of the Ison Law Firm. We'll see you next time.
This is the podcastfactory.com.